Today's video is going to be about a genre of game that I absolutely love. It's my favorite, and everyone knows that's platformers. And I want to talk about someone whose history may have been forgotten because they're doing some things now that are much different, and maybe a lot of people don't know about the games that this person worked on in the past and just the pedigree that this person has. And then I want to close the video with a game that I think this person created that is woefully underappreciated. Maybe it's looked at as something that's a bit kiddie, but it is something that you absolutely have to play based on the past creative works that this person has done. So that person is Mark Cerny. Let me get some of the history of Mark Cerny out of the way first. So we're going to start in 1994 and go to 1998. Cerny was involved with Universal Interactive Studios, which at the time was a newly formed division of Universal, and it was primarily formed for video games. Cerny described that studio as a boutique publisher, and he was initially a vice president of product development and later became its president. He was given a good amount of freedom within the division, stating that the best part about the job was that Universal didn't really know the business, and as a result, he had great big bags of money to spend and no supervision. Under Cerny, Universal Interactive Studios hired in two small and new development studios to develop for the PlayStation. Aided by his past connections within Sony, the three-person Naughty Dog and two-person Insomniac Games. How about that? He actually hired in a brand new three-person Naughty Dog studio and a two-person Insomniac Games, and they were brought in to build Way of the Warrior. That was Naughty Dog. And they had signed on for 3 additional titles. Cerny helped with their next title, a little game called Crash Bandicoot. He actually helped develop that title, which Sony picked up to publish in 1996. And Insomniac similarly had completed their first title, Disruptor, and Cerny helped them prepare for their next game. So he went from Naughty Dog's next game, which was Crash Bandicoot, to Insomniac's next game, which was another little title called Spyro the Dragon. And he also helped pick up and publish by Sony in 1998. When Naughty Dog and Insomniac's contracts with Universal expired, both studios signed up with Sony to continue to develop games for the PlayStation, and Cerny kept in close contact with both teams afterwards. Now, in 1998, Universal as a whole had financial issues that set a hiring freeze on the Interactive Studios groups. Cerny opted to leave Universal to become consultant under his own company, Cerny Games. That would allow him to keep working with Naughty Dog, Insomniac, and Sony. So based just on that little bit of history on Mark Cerny and the games that he's actually worked on, you can see that he's not just this suit within a company being brought in to sort of lead the development or the marketing for a particular piece of software or a particular piece of hardware. He's actually somebody who knows what it means to make a game, who knows what it means to have support, who knows the kind of support that developers need when they're making great quality software. Now here's where things get interesting. Around 1999, Sony was developing the hardware for the PlayStation 2. Yoshida was executive producer of product development, and he contacted Cerny about helping to develop a graphics engine for the new console. Cerny accepted and worked in Japan over a 3-month span, being the first American to work on the PlayStation 2. Once the engine that Mark Cerny helped create for the PlayStation 2 was complete, Cerny helped both Naughty Dog and Insomniac with their first PlayStation 2 titles, Jak and Daxter: The Precursor Legacy and Ratchet and Clank respectively, as well as several sequels in both series that followed. I wanted to focus in on these games that he helped create because they are clearly in the genre of platforming, and also he is very keen to make sure that first-party teams have engines that skew favorably to the particular piece of hardware. And the interesting part is he picked an x86 approach for the PlayStation 4. He was the first American to ever design hardware for Sony, the PlayStation 4, and then the PlayStation 5. What's interesting is while the x86 approach would make some parts of development easier for development, Cerny understood and he told Sony that it was currently unfavorable to the first-party developers, as it would prevent them from accessing low-level functions that many used for extracting as much performance from the particular consoles as possible. What he's saying is x86 makes things much more easier for developers, but on closed platforms like consoles, to get to those low-level functions, there had to be more within the graphics engine, more within the development tools, and that's where Sony really started to focus in on giving their first parties access to their consoles in a way that the x86 architecture maybe wouldn't allow for other systems. So this is why you're seeing the PlayStation 4 and the PlayStation 5, while being based on x86, doing things that seem absolutely incredible. For instance, on a base PlayStation 4, you get Horizon Forbidden West, Ghost of Tsushima, and on the PlayStation 5 early on, you're getting things like Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart that showcase every new graphical feature and is an incredible looking game. So all of that was said because I want to lead it into a game that I think is very important to the launch of the PlayStation 4, and that is the game Knack. Now, why I wanted to lay the groundwork for Crash Bandicoot and Spyro the Dragon and Jak and Daxter and countless other games that Mark Cerny worked on, not just the technology behind the graphics and the graphics engines for the PlayStation 2, the PlayStation 3, the PlayStation 4, and the PlayStation 5, but just that style of game and the heart behind this particular genre, the platforming genre. Mark Cerny felt that it was very, very important to have a game that was technically sound at the launch of a console, but was also approachable for everyone. And I know a lot of people, especially older, overlook this game, but the history of the things that he worked on leads into why this game begs to be played. Because, of course, it can be played by young and old alike, but there are so many ideas that are cultivated over time from those past games leading up to this. And while working on the PlayStation 4 hardware, utilizing that x86 based approach to also allow those low-level functions to be tapped into by first-party developers, and making sure that they have an advantage over every other developer so that they can really program and develop to the metal of the console. This is the experience, these are the experiences that you want and that you get when you have someone like that in charge. This game features every single platforming element that you know and you love from those past games, and the DNA of all of those games is all over this. For a PlayStation 4 launch title, the cutscenes, the animation, everything is top-notch. The scope of the game is incredible. It has a fixed camera that makes it approachable to people who maybe don't know a lot about controlling a video game, but it also has tons of secrets and top-notch platforming elements that if you're a fan of that particular genre, you're going to find things that you love. If you're into those style of games, it's incredibly deep. If you're not into those style of games, it's incredibly rewarding and accepting and forgiving. And that's what was important from the start of the PlayStation 4 and the PlayStation 5. That's what's important from the start of every single console, having a game that speaks to the approach. And it's just about giving people something fun and unique and different that they haven't seen from one generation to the next. I promise, if you go back and you play this game, and I'm playing this game, this is footage of me playing the game just yesterday. It is so deep and there's so many things to discover. If you're a fan of platforming, if you're a fan of video games in general, and you're good at playing video games, there's a lot here for you. But while I'm playing it, I'm realizing that the genius of it is that it's approachable for everyone. And that's, again, what you need at the start of a console generation. Thinking about Jak and Daxter, thinking about Spyro the Dragon, all the technology behind that, you really don't think about it while you're playing these games. But the history of those games and the history of everything that went into them leads all the way up to not just the development of the platform, which is what he was given charge of with the PlayStation 4 and the PlayStation 5, not just the development of the engines and the tools that they're going to use from a first-party standpoint, again, x86 being used, but also created in a way that gives the first-party teams an advantage on particular hardware. I think that all of that history leads up to the launch of the PlayStation 4 and a very important game called Knack. And this is Knack 2, a sequel to a game that nobody thought was going to get a sequel. But If you're a fan of the genre of platforming, if you're a fan of this development style, and if you're a fan of just a really good game from beginning to end, I promise you, if you go back and you play these games, in particular Knack 2, you're going to find something that surprises you. There's a ton of fun, a ton of creativity, great gameplay, and it's great to look at the history of somebody who's developed games for PlayStation over the years and now develops hardware, and just their approach to video game design. Thanks for watching this video. Let me know what you think in the comment section below about the video, about this game, if you played it, and I'll see you in the next one.